Hello, art friends. Bet it's weird to hear that again. It's weird to be saying it again. It's been a while since my last video. I had taken some time off. I wouldn't say I'm 100% back yet, but I'm trying to be, and that's enough for now. Happy Mother's Day, fellow moms. And if you're a child, tell your mom Happy Mother's Day. I know she will appreciate it. As a mom, I thought, how could I not make a creepy Mother's Day video? As always, make sure you're watching this video in the dark with the lights off and your headphones on for the best viewing experience. My mother refuses to acknowledge that she might have dementia. Posted by u/sugar-sode. It has become more and more obvious over the last year or so that my mother has developed dementia. She is constantly forgetting things and then acting like she knew where they were the whole time. It has become a real struggle as we are always having to remind her to do even the most simple of tasks. Over Christmas, me and my siblings sat her down and confronted her about it. She vehemently denied that she had dementia and began screaming at us for making up such horrible lies about her. She kicked us out and has demanded that we apologize or she will not let us visit. We haven't spoken to her since, but I finally decided to just bite the bullet and apologize, just to make the peace. She had an extremely smug look on her face when we walked in the door. I immediately noticed a foul odor coming from somewhere in the house. I asked her about it, but she said her nose has been blocked for the last couple of weeks. I asked her how Dad was, and she gazed at me with a look of confusion on her face. I stood up and began making my way to the spare bedroom, with my mother hot on my heels. I opened the door and had to step back due to the smell. I stood there frozen, while staring in at my bedridden father's rotting corpse, lying on the bed surrounded by his own waste. I turned to my mother and she simply stated, "Whoops," before walking away. Hey friends, so just a little backstory. I wanted to try a different art style than what I normally draw for this video because I was on a shorter time period. I kind of decided this last minute, like I mentioned. I don't know, I liked it. I think it's like kind of like cross-hatching, not exactly because I don't really know how to do cross-hatching, but it's fun, I think. A little backstory as well for this first story. While I was looking up dementia to kind of figure out what I wanted to draw, I saw that there's this test called the clock test. So if you think someone might have dementia, you give them the clock test. You ask them to draw a clock. You ask them to draw the numbers of the clock and the arrows. If they refuse, they probably have dementia. If they get the numbers wrong, they probably have dementia. There's like a 15-point system. I don't know how it works exactly, but I thought it was very interesting. So I wanted to draw the clock. I think it's a little creepy too as a background. I don't know. I think it came out really cool. My mother used to collect my teeth. I am all grown up now, but her collection is still growing. Posted by u/Pudinator. My mom always liked to collect the teeth that fell out when I was a child. I'm not entirely sure why she wanted to keep them, but I didn't really think too much either. It was just something that she did. I remember that she would always claim that it was bad luck to throw away a tooth. She was a very superstitious woman, and growing up with her, some of that rubbed off on me. She kept all of my teeth inside a small wooden box with a coat of chipping red paint. Inside, red velvet lined the bottom and sides of the box, creating a soft interior for the teeth to lay on. She kept the square box inside of the top drawer of her bedside table. I only ever saw this box make an appearance when I would lose another tooth, and she would go get the box and put the tooth into it. Other than that, it stayed hidden within her drawer. I never really thought about the box and my missing teeth. I forgot it even existed, until yesterday. I recently moved out of my mom's house, and so was in the process of moving all of my stuff out and into my new apartment. I entered my former home and residence of my mother, ready to pack up the final items that still needed moving. My mom was sitting at her kitchen table, wearing long pants, a thick sweater, and woolly pink gloves. It was a strange sight to behold, due to the fact that it was a warm day. But she is an eccentric woman, so I dismissed it. I greeted her, and she looked up at me and made a small, grunt-like noise that I assumed meant hello. She was sometimes a bit dismissive, especially because she wasn't too happy about me moving out. I continued on into the house, grabbing whatever was left of my stuff. I grabbed some clothes, a bottle of shampoo, and a couple of photo frames. I then remembered the old wooden box of old teeth. I didn't have any real reason for wanting to take it with me, but I guess I didn't want to risk any bad luck by not bringing it along. I wandered into my mom's room, which I know I probably shouldn't have done. I walked over to her nightstand and was just about to open it when I remembered that I should ask her permission before snooping through her things. I called out to my mother, who was still situated in the kitchen. "Hey Mom, is it alright if I grab that box you keep my teeth in?" I yelled out. "It's in your top drawer. There's nothing I shouldn't see in there, is there?" I awaited a response from Mom. I swore I heard a slight grunting noise that vaguely sounded like a yes. So maybe, stupidly, I opened the top drawer and plucked out the small box that sat atop a pile of old photographs. I opened the box, expecting to see around 20 teeth sitting within its wooden grasp. As I lifted the lid, I immediately saw that the box was filled to the brim with teeth. Not just baby teeth, but full-sized adult teeth as well. There had to be at least 100 pearly whites all piled on top of each other. As I stared down into the box, I heard a noise behind me, like a soft grunting sound. I spun around sharply and saw my mom standing right there. She made another muffled sound, and I noticed that her mouth didn't open. Something was definitely wrong. First, she was only making noises and not talking. And second, she was collecting teeth that didn't belong to me. "What's going on? Whose teeth are these, and what are you doing with them?" I asked in a tone that commanded an answer. She stared at me, and her eyes provided me with some sort of answer. She was afraid. I could see it by just looking into her eyes. But was she afraid that I just discovered her horrible little secret? Or afraid because something dark and terrible was happening to her? She then opened her mouth, which gave me a much more detailed explanation. As her lips parted, I saw a normal row of teeth sitting along her gums. Then she opened her mouth more, slightly tilting her head backwards as she did, and it revealed another row of teeth behind. They were jutting out of the roof of her mouth. Her entire mouth was filled with perfectly white teeth. I then noticed that the bottom of her mouth had also been growing teeth out of it. Along the sides of her tongue, teeth sprouted and protruded upwards. I let out a small yelp, both surprised and scared what I had just seen. She looked into my eyes, expecting this reaction. She then lifted both hands, grasped a gloved hand with the other, and slid her left hand mitten off. The sight of a hand absolutely covered in teeth is not one that I ever expected to witness in my life, but here it was, covering her entire hand and onto her wrist. Numerous teeth emerged from underneath the skin, poking through like sprouts growing out of dirt. Her hand was covered in the enamel growths, and no skin was visible underneath the teeth. My stomach heaved at the sight, probably both in disgust and genuine terror. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Mom took off the other glove, revealing an identical hand made up of teeth that had broken through the surface of her skin. Sensing my feeling of revulsion, I would have thought Mom would have stopped there, but she took off the woolly jumper, uncovering the rows of teeth that sat along her entire arms. Her chest area also sprouted teeth, but they were still mostly underneath the skin, like they hadn't fully grown through yet, not like the rest of her body. I didn't need to see it, but I assumed that her legs would also be covered in teeth. I watched on in horror as I saw one of the teeth near her shoulder wobble. It wobbled only slightly, but I could tell that it was loose. She had a loose tooth on her shoulder. The wobbling continued, and I saw the tooth begin to push its way out of her skin. It gave a final wobble before falling to the floor, completing its life cycle. I couldn't help but stand there, frozen in fear at what was occurring. I didn't know what to do. I knew I should try and help her, but shock wouldn't allow me. Not just yet. Mom then turned around and walked out of her bedroom. I stood for a moment longer before following, rather apprehensively. When I caught up to her, she was sat back down at the kitchen table, one tooth-covered arm resting on the table. The other clutched a pen. I'm not sure how she managed to hold a pen, but I knew it must have been painful to bend her fingers around it, as it would stretch the skin underneath the teeth. She must have fought through this pain, because she held the pen and brought it down to a piece of paper that was sitting on the kitchen table. She began to write. I approached the table, curious as to what was being written. I was terrified at this point, and hoped that she was providing more answers as to what was happening to her. I walked up to the piece of paper and started to read. What she had written was the most terrifying thing so far. I know you were scared. I was too when I found your grandmother in this state. She looked awful, just as I do now. She didn't know what was happening to her, but luckily death came quickly to her to stop this suffering. I never expected it to happen to me. I prayed that it never would. Yet here I am, plagued by the same affliction as my mother. I'm sorry to tell you this, but I think it might be hereditary. Mother's Rules, posted by u/Dust of Cosmos. When I was young, I lived in a small cabin in a forest with my mother and my sister. It wasn't completely isolated from society, but it was about a mile away from the rest of the town. She did all she could to keep us safe, and had many rules for us to follow. Most of them were normal. Don't go out at night, or make sure you don't get in trouble in school. But others were much stranger. A rule I was told after my 6th birthday was to never swim in the pond. Not only could I not swim in it, but I was not allowed to go near it at nighttime. At the time I was confused, but I wish I had adhered to it. Years later, my sister and I decided to go near it. We were curious and didn't think anything bad would happen to us. As we were observing the pool, I saw that the water looked a bit off. It was too murky to see the depths of it, but I could definitely see something in it. I brushed it off as just my mind playing tricks on me, or maybe an animal that lived there. My sister stuck her hand into it to prove there was nothing to be afraid of. Then she screamed and pulled her hand out. "Something bit me," she said. Her hand was red and bloody, and we ran out of the clearing and brought it to our mother. She reprimanded us for not listening to her rule and cleaned off my sister's wound. After it was cleaned off, I noticed something about the wound. The bite marks didn't look like an animal. Quite the contrary. They looked like a human's. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed these stories and the art as well. As always, any stories read in this video are linked below. I will also link past Mother's Day horror stories in case you didn't quite get your fill yet. That's all for this video. Until the next one, bye.